Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of the Infinity series and founder of Engen Books. Let's see what we have today. All right. Thank you for joining me for an episode of the Write Project podcast, a very special episode of the Write Project podcast. I know I say that they are all special, but this one really is. We have debut author Andrew Pike here talking about his novel, The Epic Quest of Terral B, Hylotz. And it's his first interview on the subject, to my knowledge, as well. So it's a debut novel and debut interview and debut author all in the one spot. Be sure to check this one out. He's a future Terry Pratchett, future Douglas Adams type. Lots of great wit in this one, in that tradition. Thank you for coming on the Write Project podcast, Andrew Pike.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Okay. What the heck is this novel? Because it's very strange. I enjoy it. It's very well written. I remember when you were in one of my classes, I was like, this is very, very like lit fiction, well written. You have this kind of lyricalness to your prose. It didn't shock me to know that you came from music and stuff like this, that kind of like this flow to it that comes from musically minded authors, I find. But it is odd. It is odd. The novel in and of itself, like it's a little bit choose your own adventure. It's a little bit irreverent. It's a little bit serious. It's a little bit sci-fi. How did you come to this? I've got to know. Like, what was the inspiration process?
Okay. Well, I mean, it kind of blends together several ideas that I had at the time of writing, but it kind of was spurred on by an actual event, very loosely, but where there was a hiker that showed up at a location, very loosely based, but from that event, I was just wondering like where he came from, what the story was. So I kind of took that idea and it kind of snowballed into this novel, which is part of a series as well. Yeah, so I mean, it's just basically blending together several different ideas I had at the time. I wanted to do something like a choose your own adventure kind of style, because I'm heavily influenced by video games, and I kind of want to have that interactive component with the reader going on there as well. And other than that, I just kind of wrote what I felt at the time.
Cool. What the interactive aspect with the reader is really interesting, and it's handled really well in the novel. I like the way it's done, and you can just read it page to page and be like, okay, here we go, kind of thing, like cover to cover, I mean to say. Or you can follow the guidelines at the end of several chapters. It's not every chapter. It's like a few key spots along the way. It's really interesting. It's like a cool mechanism that kind of immerses you in the book for a little bit. What made you decide to do that? That is just amazing. It's you've made some very interesting choices in the book. That's just cool, just quirky and fun.
Yeah, I mean, again, like the video game was a big inspiration, trying to get the reader involved in that way. I was inspired by Black Mirror a little bit, where they had
Bandersnatch.
Yeah, exactly, Bandersnatch, which I don't think is available anymore, but it was pretty interesting kind of choose your own adventure video, which I'm surprised it didn't catch on. There isn't more of that going on because it's very interesting. Yeah, and I just like that whole aspect of being able to choose your path, and has kind of rewatchability or rereadability. You can go back and choose a different path and that kind of thing. Put Easter eggs in and try to kind of build a better like a mystery
Yep.
For the whole thing. So I mean, that's kind of where the inspiration for the Choose Your Own Adventure came from. I did read Choose Your Own Adventure books when I was a kid as well, and yeah, I just that was kind of a later component. The novel didn't necessarily have that from the start, but it was something I kind of infused into the novel when kind of when the Black Mirror thing came out. I think that was a big inspiration, but generally it was something I wanted to play with.
I remember when Bandersnatch came out, I was going to the theater a fair bit, and they were experimenting / implementing this technology before the movie started, where it could, like, you could go on your scene app or whatever and like play the games, like the trivia games that came up, and win points, kind of thing, for it to be redeemed on your scene points. And it could tell which theater you were in. Like, you put in the code like you would on stuff like that. Like, it came, oh, put up this code, and it's very good. And it would be like, okay, not only they're in this building, they're on this Wi-Fi, they are in this particular showing, kind of thing, and add you to the list. And I'm like, okay. And I swear, part of me thought, and part of me was just like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? I was hoping for movies that were interactive, not movies like Bandersnatch at Home, where it's choose your own adventure, but like, okay, let's take a poll of the audience. We're at a point in the thing, and you get to vote and choose which way the story goes or which character the narrative follows, like in Terral B, Hylotz or stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that would be so much fun. And I would just go with a bunch of friends and like troll movies. Like, no, they die. That character dies right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an incredible idea. Like, I'm surprised there's not more of that happening. I mean, certainly not now during the pandemic. There's not a lot of, I don't know, but many movies. Yeah.
They did that on Futurama once as a joke. They were like, they had interactive movies, and it was like Fry goes to a private investigator movie, and he the choice is like detective whatever, detective robot goes follows the dame and investigates the murder, or stays home and does his taxes. And Fry clicks it wrong accidentally, and he just watches the robot do his taxes for 2.5 hours. And I'm like, I would do that. I would go to a movie once, watch it regular, and then I'd go again with a bunch of friends and be like, no, Thor does his taxes. Thor does his taxes.
It's pure evil.
Yeah. Oh my. I've also longed for, this is way off topic, but I've been waiting for, you ever see those cameras, the 360 camera ones? It'd be so hard to do because usually the director's behind the camera and stuff like that. But I've been waiting, hoping some experimental filmmaker will make like a movie with one of those every 360 cameras, where then you are in control. Like, you can compose the shot and just turn all around the scene, and stuff would be able to sneak up on you because like you weren't looking in the right direction and stuff like that.
I mean, they kind of have that now, actually. There's VR happening now.
Yep.
Like Oculus is a VR headset that I have, and you can access these types of experiences.
That's true.
Kind of like videos you can look around in. So it's kind of like it's starting to emerge now.
Yeah.
I know Facebook is looking at doing augmented reality. I don't know what that's going to be like, but yeah. And I imagine it'd be very expensive, and it's the problem right now is cost. But there's a part of me that's like, okay, but like, I'm a big Marvel fan. Put me as a bystander in the middle of the Battle of New York. Like digitally create or refilm that, and just have me there, able to look around at the carnage. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, if they could do that, that would be some next level stuff for sure.
Yeah. Apparently they I've used the Oculus before, and I kind of wish I had one during the pandemic. I would have set up my whole basement as just a VR room and gotten out. But apparently when it started, the Valve, the people who made Portal, one of my favorite video games, were working on a Portal 3, and the way that they were justifying it was because they're always big on like, we're not just going to make a sequel just because. They were making it to use like VR technology and have you actually like in control of the portal gun and stuff like that. And the
Right.
problem, they got pretty far into development, and the problem that they encountered was the VR was too good, and when you went through a portal, all the humans they beta tested it on would just lose their lunch immediately. Like it was just it was
Right.
too good to the point where it's like, oh no, the human body cannot withstand going through a portal, even just visually. It's a bad scene. So yeah, that got abandoned because it made like a ridiculous percentage of the people who did it very ill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely games out there now on the Oculus that are very realistic. Um, you know, that it's nausea inducing when you're playing them. Like you have to be careful when you're playing the games for sure. But anyway, yeah.
Cool. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Yeah, there's tons of stuff that we could do with that. Back to your book, back to the Epic Quest kind of thing. This is a very fun book that I think a lot of people should check out. There's a lot of humor in it and a lot of heart in it, and also just a bunch of twists and turns. Like you said, starts like very Earthbound kind of thing, if I remember correctly, and you end up on different planets, following different pilots, going to different worlds, aliens, just the whole 9 yards kind of thing. It's very like a smart, and you have a very witty prose style to you. How much of that's intentional? Because when people have called me my work funny in the past, I'm never trying to be. It's always just very like that. These are my thoughts. This is how my brain works. It's funny. I'm like, thank you, I guess,
Yeah.
yeah. How much of that's intentional?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm kind of like you. It's just kind of like these are my thoughts, heavily influenced by Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah.
And he wrote very kind of subtle humor that to I you don't even necessarily pick up on all the humor, but you just kind of get his rhythm and you get his vibe that he's going with, and then just kind of becomes part of how you think about certain things. So it's not necessarily always intentional, and sometimes it just comes out of nowhere, and sometimes it is intentional. I'm just trying to write a specific thing, or I find it really funny and I just write it and I find it amusing to myself, so I just keep it in there. Yeah, but definitely Kurt Vonnegut's huge influence in that regard.
I find that the things people comment on in my stuff that they find funny, if I analyze it, it's I'm describing reality, and I think most of reality is ridiculous. And so when I describe it, I'm just describing it how I see it. And people are like, that's funny. And I'm like, there's a few of my books that people have called satire before. I'm like, that's not satire.
Right.
That's the way I see the world. And then they kind of look at me like, hard? Like,
Yeah. Well, that's true. The world, I see it in a similar way. I think there's a lot of absurdity in the world for sure, and it's very easy to capture that on the page, I think.
yeah, for sure. Awesome blossom. Awesome blossom. All right. Well, Andrew Pike, what is let's say the devil showed up right now, and he looked like Matt LeDrew, because that's how the devil would look. And he offered you a deal, and he said, I will make you an amazing and successful writer, but you have to give up something you love in order to get it. Like, it's a deal with the devil. What would you give up? What is something that you love that you would give up to be a better writer?
It's very kind of like Mephistopheles kind of situation.
Yep.
That's a very I don't know. I wouldn't give up coffee for sure. I wouldn't give up music. I mean, I have like a pack of chocolates on my desk if he wants that.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
where you're looking for something more substantial.
No, if you love it.
What are my options? Like what? I don't know. There's not much that I would give up. I believe that, you put the hard work in and you eventually have something to show for it. So
Yeah.
I would choose not to make the deal.
Bit of luck. Okay. That you're the second one in a few days to choose no deal. That's interesting. Okay. That's cool. I like it. Shows some like I don't know if it shows fortitude or if it shows like just internal happiness, like kind of a Zen quality or whatever. That's cool.
Or just foolishness, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard for me to ask that question and not bring up Spider-Man because it's been almost 20 years and I'm still so frustrated that they had Spider-Man make a deal with the devil. Just I will never not be frustrated no matter how much they try to fix it. I'm like, you didn't fix it. You didn't. It's angry. Yeah. Probably. Oh, here's an interesting one for you. You're a very lit guy. Have you ever traveled to get inspiration for writing, Andrew Pike? Have you ever gone on what the literary call a literary pilgrimage?
Yes, actually, I have. So I spent my entire life in Newfoundland up until the age of around 23, I think. And I was working at a local call center that shall remain nameless.
Okay.
And I kind of felt like I wanted to get away from Newfoundland. I want to explore. And I did have an idea for a novel and a series of novels. And so I just kind of left Newfoundland completely, moved to Banff, Alberta, worked in the hospitality industry as a housekeeper. Banff Springs Hotel, beautiful hotel. So I went to work there every day. I had beautiful views. And
I've been there. It is lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very inspirational. And it really helped me. Like I mentioned that I wrote like 4 books roughly in like a 3-month period.
Jeez.
That was when I was working at Banff, and I went to town with it, and I just kind of like it was a very interesting experience because I was working cleaning toilets all day, and then after that I would just kind of come home and write and just.
But there's something about that, man. There's something about doing jobs where you can mentally check out and still do the job. That kind of like manual, like, okay, well, I'm just going to be doing this for the next few hours, and your brain just wanders, and it's almost like meditation where you figure out the stuff, and then you've got it all figured out. You're like, oh yeah, and then you get home and you just write it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely truth behind that.
Yeah.
It was a really good experience, and everything I've written or wrote since that has been just garbage. So no.
Where are those 4 books?
I still have them. I may try to reinvigorate the series at some point, but
cool.
It was kind of very early writing, so
that's
it wasn't
fair.
as polished as writing nowadays. So
that's fair. Cool. Andrew Pike, what is a word that you cannot spell? If this word shows up in one of your books, your editor or spell check spelled this word.
Onomatopoeia.
Like you can't spell the word onomatopoeia, or you can't spell any onomatopoeia?
The word.
Okay, that's fair. That's quite a word. Yep. All right, that's fair. I would definitely have to look up that one. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely probably others, but that's the one that just comes to mind immediately.
Okay. All right.
What about yourself?
Restaurant, famously, I cannot spell. Don't know why, and whenever I try, spell check gives up. I don't know how I think it's spelled, but it's hard to describe, but like my fingers just don't do it. Rhythm. I've had this one a lot lately, but like however I think the word rhythm is spelled, spell check just gives up and says, no, not that.
Yes, RH, is it RHYTHM? Yeah. So I can do that one just because I have a background in music and musical terms, but that is a tough one.
Yeah. I feel like I think it's RH kind of thing, and that the Y is later and like rhythm. You know what I mean? Anyway, my brain just messes it up. I also think that like way back in the day when I was first just getting into writing, like, I learned to write on a typewriter and then graduated to the first word processors, and the spell checks were rudimentary at the time. So I think some errors like that went unnoted, like went unspell checked for so long. Then now they're just in there as that's the version, and they're hard to like root out when they're that deeply ingrained in your patterns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a word I have trouble pronouncing. One of my favorite things for just pure guilty pleasure enjoyment is Ninja Turtles. Love me some Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles are awesome. The first Ninja Turtles comics were published by Mirage Comics, and they named it that because they didn't really have a studio. It was just a mirage. It was just their basement. It was the studio was an illusion. It was two guys in their basement. For some reason, I mispronounced that name when I was young. I think comic books taught me that if a word like looks like a real English word, that you should put a different emphasis on it. Like, because so many superhero and supervillain names are that. So I went Mirage. I just thought it was Mirage Comics, and it's really hard every time I talk about it. So I don't sound like an idiot. I have to mentally correct myself before, and I stutter every time. But when you think of it like Magneto, Magneto is just the word magnet and then the letter O after it. It should be Magnet O, but no one's going to say that. So we put a different emphasis on it because it sounds cooler. Magneto sounds like a name, whereas Magnet O sounds ridiculous. But a lot of comic book names are just real English words with a different emphasis on them. There, yeah. Comic books taught me to misread things. That's not gonna come back to bite me for saying it all. I don't know what you're talking about. Andrew Pike, if you're writing, if your body of work, so everything you've written through a magical spell was transformed into an animal, what animal would that be?
Probably a moose.
Okay, I like that. It's a very Newfoundland answer, in theory. Why a moose?
Well, I'm just referring now kind of to the novel.
Sure.
But basically, there's a lot more going on with the moose than you can really observe from the first book. So there's a lot more under the surface that's happening. And I would like to think that my writing contains kind of Easter eggs in that regard as well. So there's more happening than you can necessarily read on the surface.
Okay.
Not a huge amount.
Okay. I like it.
But a reasonable amount, yeah.
I like it. Andrew Pike, does the act of writing, the physical, like when you sit down to do it for the day, does it energize you or does it exhaust you? Do you come out of it going like, oh, now I'm going to go get the stuff done? Or is it just like drained and like, now I need to have a drink and go to sleep and not do anything else for the day?
I would say it could do both, but when it's really working, it tends to energize more so than exhaust. If it's not working, like you said before, if I get distracted or if I have to do the research thing, then it becomes very draining.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of the Infinity series and founder of Engen Books. Let's see what we have today. Andrew Pike, what is your writing kryptonite? If you are writing and this thing happens, it just ends your writing productivity for the day.
Writing kryptonite. That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. What derails me from writing? So you mean like if I'm actually not necessarily researching, but actually like in the zone writing and something happens, it takes me out of the zone, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that could be anything really. There's not a specific thing that would kind of derail me necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily that would just completely throw me off.
Is it the research? Is it the research where it's like that? Like I was sitting on the break. 1 second, I'll research for a moment, and then 3 hours have passed, and it's time to stop writing.
Yeah, that definitely could be it. Like if I have to, that's a good point. So if I'm writing something, then all of a sudden I want to support it with research. Then I kind of go down that rabbit hole of research, and I get aggravated realizing that I thought I knew rather a certain amount about a certain subject, and I didn't know enough to kind of support it adequately. That can be frustrating. So that is a good example. That's why I try to separate writing from research, and I try to get research done ahead of time, and then do only minor research during the actual writing creative process. So I'm definitely more of a planner than a pantser.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah. Same. I'm a big fan of there's an edict where it's can't remember who said it, but basically plan when you're like plot your book when you're feeling creative, when you have those moments of like bam creative energy, and then have the plot done, and then you can just write like a machine. Like you can just once it's done, it's like, all right, I gotta write this scene today, and you can just kind of do it. Even if you're not feeling the most creative, you can kind of like you can follow the plan. You know what I mean? And then you don't have to tap into that creative spring quite so often. You've done the hard work of figuring it out.
Right. And you used to be a pantser more so, didn't you?
I briefly was a pantser. Yeah. First 3 books I think that I wrote when I was very young, I was like that, and then quickly discovered that planning led to more consistent work. Yeah. But to be fair, those first 3, I was just writing. You know what I mean? To the point that those first 3 were written as one long book, and I wasn't even thinking about books. I was just writing. I was just, here we go. Let's sit down and start going. Okay, what happens next? Okay, what happens next? Okay, what happens? Just going. You know what I mean? For my own pleasure, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I had a period like that too, where I was just like writing the scene. Okay, how much can I do? Can I do this? And I ended up writing like 3 or 4 books in a very short period of time. It was absolutely very rough, right? But I did write that. They never really got published, but it was a good experiment at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone should check out this book. It is loads of fun. It's got a little bit of everything that you might want from a book. Once again, it is called The Epic Quest of Terral B. Hylotz. Thank you for coming on the Write Project podcast, Andrew.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Bam. Excellent. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.